Good morning, young kings. Time for your morning motivation. Um, just ran 10 miles today, um, communing with the Most High. So, time for your morning or morning motivation to get started this morning. So, I don't know if you watched the last video or if you kind of spot check here and there, but there is an awakening that's happening in my life, and it's not a pretty one either. It's actually a painful one. So, um, but I kind of ended the Broken but Brilliant series, excuse me, and transitioned into Flourishing while Frustrated. And I think this opportunity here for you to learn, and not just for you, but some of these things are for me. I think I get more out of them than most people glean from them, but it's kind of my therapy. But Flourishing while Frustrated, because if you don't learn to flourish while frustrated, then your frustration um, will sabotage your flourishing. So you can either stay frustrated in the process, in a defeated state, or you can learn how to navigate through the difficulties and adversity. So God is really doing something in my life, and um, I'll be honest, this is a hard process, and conventional wisdom would have told me to wait till I get on the other side of it, and then give you uh, uh, a look into what I just been through. That would have been wisdom, and it probably would have felt a little better to talk to you on the other side of this storm, of this development, of this construction. Then I probably could have had a clearer point of view, um, looking back at it. But sometimes when you're going through it, it's difficult, and I wanted to take you all on this journey through it, and not just give you a rear view mirror perspective, but I wanted you to see through the windshield of what I'm going through, and kind of like what's coming up, and seeing how I'm reacting to it. And all the times my reactions it won't be right. Um, Most of the time, I'm capable of messing up and fumbling the simplest things. I know in football, this analogy where, and it happens time and time again, where um, there's an athlete out there and he's breaking away from the pack, and it looks like he's about to score a touchdown. And right before he crosses the touchdown threshold, he drops the ball. And it's only a touchdown if you cross that threshold, that playing with the ball. So I'm capable of breaking out of the pack, and it looks like, hey, I'm about to score it. And right before I score, sometimes I drop the ball. And I know that that's not unique to me. That's probably some areas in your life as well. This morning, I want to talk to you about flourishing while frustrated. Um, and I think we're gonna park here for a little bit, and just kind of unpack some things in this flourishing. And and today's one is about timing. You know, the transition takes time. It's not an overnight process. It's not something that you're gonna wish. I mean, you may wish that it happens overnight, and there may be times that God decides to accelerate some things in your life, and you don't go through the traditional process. And there's been areas in my life that's been accelerated, but then there's some areas in my life that still need to be developed. So when I speak to you, I'm not speaking to you from an expert point of view. Um, I'm a student in this game called life. I'm in class, you know, and there's a saying out there says, the difference between a smart person and a wise person is that, you know, a smart person learns from their mistakes. A wise person learns from other people's mistakes. So what I'm trying to do is stop you from being smart. You know, try to impart some wisdom on you so you can be able to navigate through this thing called life a little easier. And but even me saying that, I don't know if the route is supposed to be easy, and I think that's a deception in itself. And we may come back to that word easy, because it's a deception and it's deceiving, to think that um, you should have it easier once you are. But the difference between a smart person and a wise person is that Like I said, a smart person needs to go through it. They need to experience something before they learn from it. But a wise person can look at somebody else doing something and realize that that wall is hard. That's a brick wall. I don't need to hit my head against that wall to realize it's hard. I just seen this other guy, and he's got this bandage over his head, got stitches and everything. Let me learn from him. So hopefully in these videos, you can learn some from my mistakes. So it takes time. So I got a few stories, and we're gonna. I don't know how much the Holy Spirit's gonna impact on here, because this is all by His leading. So hopefully you glean something out of it. And with that being said, it's like, if you don't, there's times, I know my mentor is actually a pastor as well. I hired him as a life coach. Yes, I hired him because I pay him because he has worth. And I didn't want to just him come mentor me and talk to me for free, because his time is valuable. But he was watching one of my videos. He says, I could tell that you're anointed, but I can tell when you jump out and your flesh just takes over. And I'm sure you all can see my human experience as well. Like when I come out and there's something that's bothering me, and my human side does come out. But getting back to the story about learning from other people's mistakes and growing. I remember as a kid, I think I was in, it had to have been like 3rd or 4th grade. And we was in the store as a family, my mom and my brothers. And this is back in the time and in the 80s. And Michael Jackson is extremely big. I mean, like the biggest pop star. People was fainting at his concerts, and people were just going through that Michael Jackson craze. And we weren't that exempt from that. I mean, I was a huge, and still am, a Michael Jackson fan of the talent and the art, and the way he expressed himself through music was just second to none, in my opinion. One of the greatest entertainers of all time. But anyways, we're in Kmart, and they had these Michael Jackson cards, little playing cards that they used to sell at the store. And we were Michael Jackson fans, as I indicated. So me and Marlon are looking at the Michael Jackson cards, and we know we don't have any money to buy it. So long story short, we end up putting some Michael Jackson cards in our pocket, and just kind of trying to steal from the store. Yeah, I do got issues, and I do got a rocky past, but we were stealing Michael Jackson cards. And my mom is over in another part of the store shopping, so we go to the cars, we put them in our pocket, and then we go to try to find our mom, just so we can act like we're normal and just walking out and whatever. But when we walk up to our mom, Marlon's ahead of me. He's like 2 aisles ahead of me, and he gets to my mom, and my mom was like, "Hey, where you been?" And she's kind of in this playful mood with him, joking with him. And then she starts pulling on his clothes. Like, "Hey, what you got there? Your pocket's kind of bulging." So as she pulling on him, some of the Michael Jackson cards fall out of his pocket. And you should have seen the look on her face, like, "Boy, you in here stealing? You're not going to embarrass me and do all this?" And man, she snatched those cards and she threw them down and she grabbed them. And I'm looking like, I'm still 2 aisles back, but I'm seeing this. And I was like, man, Marlon just got caught. So she's dealing with him and his mistakes, and me, I'm like 2 hours back, and I still got Michael Jackson cards in my pocket. So what I do, I then turn around and I reach in my pocket and I throw them under the aisle and get rid of all my Michael Jackson cards. So by the time she start dealing with him, I'm now coming up, and she asked me, she's like, "Andrew, come here, what you got in your pocket?" I was like, "Nothing." And she calls him over checking me, and I don't have any Michael Jackson. She said, "This dude," she said, "your little brother over here is stealing Michael Jackson cards." And I'm acting like I'm shocked. I'm like, "What? I didn't know nothing about it." So you might say that I was a snake for doing that, but the bottom line is that I had to utilize a little wisdom and realize that this dude had just bumped his head, and it wasn't going to be wisdom for me to go up there and still act like I could get away with something when I couldn't. So the bottom line is that the transition takes time. um, and you got to use wisdom, and it's not going to happen overnight. Um, when I was running this morning, I realized that the stage that I'm at in my life is like it's in an isolation stage, and that's why I'm transitioning back into your morning motivation for this um, mentoring minute, which is more than a minute. We're going on 10 minutes already, so we're not sure how long this is going to take. But I was realizing that this has been a long process that I've been in, and the reality of it is like today is a significant day because I go get my ID card today, my new ID card with my lieutenant colonel rank on there, and I started realizing that this has been a long journey. The benefits that I'm reaping today are the results of seeds I planted 26 years ago. Like it was October 3rd, 1994 when I first joined the Army. So over just about 26 years ago that I started this process, and it wasn't overnight. Um, the key to success, and I'm going to give y'all a lot of tips about flourishing while frustrated. And the thing about it, this is going to come direct from the Holy Spirit. I'm not going to charge you this. Most people get on the other side and they want to be motivational speakers, and they want to charge you to come to a conference so they can give you some information that God gave them for free. But I'm going to give you free game here. So if you listen, and there should be an element of being able to grow and develop with me while I'm growing and developing. But as I mentioned, October 3rd, 1994 is when I started this journey. And here it is, about 26 years later, from enlisted, from barely graduating high school to now today going to get my ID card to become a lieutenant colonel. Well, I'm already a lieutenant colonel, but to have it reflected on my ID. Um, there's this process, like it didn't happen overnight. And when the thing about success is that your transition takes time. It's like it's not how fast you can get there. Sometimes it's about sustainment. How long can you stay? It's about endurance. This is not a sprint. It's a marathon. So the things that I planted 26 years ago are still blessing me to this day. But on the other end, and that's one of the flourishing parts of my life. On the other end, it's like um, things that I planted of deception and adultery and cheating started 26 years ago. Um, and some of that stuff is still bearing fruit today, like a broken relationship. So when I was going through this element of time while I was running, it's like to try to remind you, it's like, what are you planning? Because you will benefit from the fruits, or you will be punished, or you will suffer setbacks from those seeds planted. So are you planting things that's going to bless you? Are you planting things that are going to cause destruction and harm in your life? And unfortunately, my life is not universal. It's not absolute in one way or the other. I'm going through this parallel journey. Some seeds that I planted are continuing to bless me, and some seeds that I planted are continue to wreak havoc. And that's where I think God has got me in a place of isolation right now, and trying to get me to chop down some trees of some seeds that I planted, and then water trees that are continue to flourish. He doesn't want me to be hot and cold. He wants me to be all in, and it's a process to get there. It doesn't happen overnight, as I indicated. So what you do now from this day forward will kind of bear witness to the choices and the results you're getting in life. And people won't understand. I mean, I'm going through this journey public, and I'm choosing to make it public because I think there's benefits in you seeing not only my successes but hearing my failure as well. So I'm in the process of trying to be whole, and in that process, there's still going to be some missteps along the way. And I don't want you to get discouraged to think that, hey, I can't make it here, or that it's difficult, or that you planted seeds of destruction and now you're reaping the consequences of that. And there are some consequences to pay for the things I've done. And I tell you, this season, I don't know if you've seen the last video, but I prayed for the awakening to happen. And I tell you what, if you really want to be comfortable, don't pray for God to overrule your will, because there's some things that God is doing in my life, and I'm looking like, after I prayed, I'm looking like, God, why are you doing this? Like, and I find it arrogant, because I find myself asking God and talking to God. It's like, God, if I were God, I wouldn't do me like this. I would plant me in topsoil, give me the best food, and make sure that the conditions are right for me to flourish. And God, and God is like, no, He's gonna put me in a desert, and He's reminding me, it's like, if I give you the best of the best, and you're not ready for it, you're just gonna spoil it. You're just gonna destroy it. And I think that I would destroy things. Like, I know as a kid, even as me as a kid, and even as a parent, um, there's been times things have been given to me. You give your kids stuff for Christmas, and they're excited for probably about that first week, and then after that, they transition on to something else, and you didn't spend all this time and energy and money trying to get something that you think your kids are going to appreciate. But the reality of it is, they don't appreciate it because they didn't work for it. Through the real progress, it will be shown for those. When you earn something, you tend to take care of it better. When somebody give you something, sometimes you don't really appreciate its value. So God has got me in a place where it's a desert, and I'm like, God, why? And He's saying, and I mean, if I could use my imagination in my fallen state, I mean, God is probably down looking at me and says, get your ass in the corner and sit down and just take this. Excuse my language, but I mean, I'm hard-headed, and I question at times. I'd be like, man. But I would remember a while back, I asked an individual, I said, and they were going through an issue, and my issue is like this. I go through a lot, and I have a lot of wisdom that's imparted in me, but sometimes I fail to be able to help myself, but I can find myself helping others. And I was just talking to a few friends about that, and maybe that'll come out in another video. Um, my inability to be perfect doesn't stop me from reaching out and trying to help other people. So I'll continue to try to reach out and help other people, and just continue to navigate through that. But as I was running, or even in my neighborhood, there's construction going on, and there's detour signs. And we talked about this word detour, and I talked to you about a book that I was reading, The Obstacle is the Way. But there's some things about that detour. You'll come to a sign, and there's a sign that goes into my neighborhood that says no through traffic, meaning that if you're just passing through, this sun is getting bright again, that's the Lord shining on me. But there's a part in your life that it's going to come to a point where it says no through traffic. That means like construction is going on, and that if you don't have business back here, you're not supposed to be back here. You're not supposed to go there. So it gets a point in time where it's there to route people out from just transition out who think they may want to be back there, or just passing through who really don't want it. But then there's, it says through traffic, but it's in my neighborhood, so I live there. So you need to go to a point where sometimes you got to go around the construction and go through it to get to a place you live. So where you at in life in this time, it's like some things you can't pass through, because there's signs to discourage you from there. But if you want to really flourish, it's going to take time, and you got to place residence there. You got to build your house there, and even though construction is going on, it's time for you to go home. It's time for you to still flourish in the middle of being frustrated. And there's some things that if you don't live back there and you really don't want to be there, then it's going to route you a different place. But when you live there, then you're going home. So it takes time. And I know we're going over 20 minutes. We're just about to get 20 minutes, but I got a story, and this has been on my heart since yesterday evening. And it talks about in the Bible, in John 21, about God talking um, to Simon Peter about fishing. And when it gets to the chapter in 21, I'm gonna try to get over here and out of the sun. I know it's gleaming, kind of hard, but it talks about it in that book, John 21. It picks up, and this is like the third time that Jesus had, or Yeshua. I know you call him Jesus, but sometimes I still slip. But Yeshua um, came and called the disciples, and he called them earlier, and they immediately followed him, um, and started following him along the way. And then he came and taught them again, um, and but by this time, their disciple Simon Peter is there, and he's fishing. Well, he's there, and he makes a statement. He's like, "I'm gonna go fishing," just out the blue, just like. And you got to realize this is a professional fisherman. This is what he's done all his life. This is his craft. He's an expert at this. So he's going back to familiar. So in this book, they're sitting there, and he just stands up and says, "I'm gonna go fishing." And then when he stands up to go fishing, there's a few other people that gets up to go fishing with him and say, "I'm gonna go with you. Yeah, fishing sounds good right now." So they go out and go fishing, and they're fishing, and they're doing this thing. And then these are professionals. These ain't just no novice out there with a line thinking they're going to get something. This is where the Lord had found them in the beginning. This was how they fed their family and how they navigated through life and just kind of prospered. But at this point in time, it was their profession was more of a distraction from their calling. So they've been fishing all day and haven't caught anything, just out there working hard and, trying this and trying that, because nobody really sets out to fail, and nobody plans on failure. I remember this song from Fidel. It was a Christian rapper, and he had a statement in the song, and he was talking about his father, and he was saying, he really didn't want to be like his father. But then he realized that his father didn't want to be like his father. Like, that wasn't a choice that he chose to make. It was just the result of some choices that he made. So nobody really chooses to a path to failure, but at the same time, they go back into a place where they find themselves failing. And it wasn't, and I think that's the hardest thing about, especially as young kings and as men, is that the hardest thing is for people to point at your failure, because the one thing you are intimately familiar with is your failure. Don't nobody need to tell you you messed up. You know in your mind when it started to go left, when it started to get off track. And I think some of our pride and our arrogance is when other people recognize it and they want to point at it as well. And we find ourselves getting defensive in that, because we already then beat ourselves up, especially if you got the Spirit bearing witness in you. The Spirit ain't gonna just let you go out there and have fun. And detour again, it's like there's been times where God has been trying to mature me and grow me, and I have been resistant to that growth, meaning that there's times where I've been out in a club and I'm drinking, and I'm supposed to be having a good time, and I'm supposed to be enjoying myself, and got a little buzz, and I'm drinking, and everybody's out there and just having a good time. But in me, there's something in me. It's like, what the fuck you doing out here? You ain't even having fun. Like, why are you here? Like, why are you doing this? And I find myself questioning myself in the midst of this environment that was supposed to be fun, and at one point in time was extremely fun to me. But then it gets to a point where, like, something in me is the Spirit's like, why? Like, this ain't even fun. Why are you doing this? And the choice is, sometimes what I do, I just have another drink. I try to drown out that voice. But the reality of it is that if you got the Spirit bearing witness in you, it's gonna tell you when you're doing something wrong, and you don't want somebody else to be pointing at that. So getting back to this place, it's like Simon Peter and them, they were out fishing, and they were failing, and these are expert at what they're doing. So then Yeshua comes up to them from the shore. And this is where I really want to park here, because he says something to him. He says, "Hey, children, have you caught any fish?" And I was like, wow, these are grown men. These are professionals. These are people that, know this craft pretty well. And his response to them is like, "Hey, children." And it's like he's calling them kids. Like and their results had kid-like results. Like they weren't manifesting excellence or manhood in their results, because they had been out there working and doing this stuff, and they weren't bearing any fruits. So they were still like childlike. And at first I was like, is he insulting them? Because especially being a minority, and a black man, if someone were to come up to you and call you boy, that kind of has uh, kind of a derogatory type, statement to it, and you'll be offended, when they say, "Hey, boy," like, in your immediate defense, like, "Hey, I'm a man. What you call me no boy?" And there'd be an altercation or some type of misunderstanding. But this wasn't that type of children. I felt a sense of, he was saying like, there's an element of humility that needs to be had here. And I'm going to use my spiritual imagination here, and this is not something you're probably going to hear in a church or something, but it was like he was saying, "Look, children, in order for you to do this, you're going to have to humble yourself to be all that you called to be." Like, he couldn't talk to them as men, because and there's times in my life where God can't talk to me as men. There's times where he desired to give me meat, but I'm still on the milk. I'm still trying to digest the milk. But to think about it, I can sense, like, when he called them children, it was like himself, Yeshua himself, was in a humble state for him to even come down, because he was co-equal, he was co-God, and he had to humble himself to be less. And I don't know if you can even say that he was less, but he had to submit himself to the Father, and because in the beginning he was equal with the Father, and he brought himself lower, just so we can go higher. So there's an element when he was calling them children, he was like, "Look, I know you professional, and I know that you are thinking you're excelling in this, but I need you to recognize that I need you to come down from your expertise. I need you to come down from where you think that you're going to prosper from. I need you to come down. I know you think you're a lieutenant, a colonel, but I need to get you back in basic training, so I can teach you some things, so I can mature you, so I can develop you into where you're going to go." So that children aspect of it was like, humble yourself, to instruction. Like, "Hey, kids, come back in here. I know you've been fishing all day, but you haven't been fishing my way. You're using the wrong bait." So in that story, and go back if you get a chance to read it, because we're coming up on 30 minutes and I got to conclude, but it's like he gives them instruction. As he calls them kids, he gives them instruction. He said, "Hey, cast your net on the right side." And it's like, when they casted the net on the right side, they went from being unprofitable and working hard to just listening and humble themselves and listening to Yeshua and casting it on the right side, and they end up being blessed. And the story said they caught 153 fish. And it's like, from operating in their own strength, in their own expertise, in their own ability, they got nothing. But humbling themselves and listening to Yeshua and doing it the right way, on the right side, they caught 153 fish. And if I could use my imagination, I think the number was supposed to be 150. It says 153. And I think that extra 3 was from the Father, from the Son, and the Holy Spirit, to say, "Look, doing it my way is the best way to do it, and it will be a blessing to you." So I conclude on this, and we're going to stay on this flourishing thing for a while, because I think there's a lot of tips that God is going to take me through, or take us through, as you venture through this. I recognize, like, in the beginning of the chapter, Simon Peter was the one, and it says in the end of the chapter, Simon Peter was the one the Lord loved. So this man was close to God, and God really loved him. And when he got up, he started this. When he got up and says, "I'm going to go fishing," you know, a lot of people followed him out into fishing because they knew he was an expert at fishing. So, and that was a kind of an indictment on me. Like, if I get off this wheel right now, um, I'm going to distract some of you, because some of you are going to come off the wheel with me and end up in a bad position as well. So my walk here won't be perfect. There's going to be some times that I jump out in the flesh and I say some off the wall things. I'm okay with being a walking contradiction. And there's some things that's going to conflict, and I'm going to navigate through these things to try to become whole. I'm not on here trying to become perfect, but what I will say is that growth is the end state, and we will flourish in spite of being frustrated. So I'm asking you today, don't try to be smart. Use some wisdom. Hey, get them cards out your pocket. You have a blessed day.